The UK in lockdown. Boris Johnson's stark message for a nation changed. This is a national emergency. Stay at home, don't go out.
I urge you, at this moment of national emergency, to stay at home, protect our NHS, and save lives.
Stark words, said a little over a year ago from now. Little did we know at this time, we would still be sitting in a lockdown 1 year later. Today, I'm talking with Luci Holland, a freelance composer, on how the pandemic has affected her and how she's adapted to the new norm.
I think it's certainly at the start of the pandemic, it was definitely a very scary time, and I'm sure for a lot of people it's continued to be a tough and challenging time as well. I feel quite lucky that a lot of my projects were already working remotely or were able to pivot fairly easily and not making too many challenges. I think really what it probably did was opened up a space and motivation for a lot of people in the creative arts world to find new ways to come together and experiment. And I think it led to people being much more open to the possibility of trying new ways of working as well. One thing that I found is I had a bit more time and space, at least at the 2020 summer last year, the start of the pandemic. I had found a bit more time to dabble in some areas of game design and coding that I have dabbled in previously, but I had a bit more time to focus on it. For example, I got a bit more into 2D game design, collaborated with an artist friend on that. That was a really fun experience, just to have the space to make a silly little game and learn a bit more.
COVID has certainly changed the way we work, and here Luci explains the events that she's been involved in and how they've adapted to work with the pandemic situation.
I work with an organisation as well based in Edinburgh called Tinderbox Collective, and they organise a range of events, community hubs, workshops, concerts around music and the arts to basically support and empower children, young people and communities with their learning and well-being, and as well as things like instrumental music lessons, composing projects and live events which have been online more recently. We also have a digital arts programme that explores creative tech, electronics and a bit of game design. So Playaway Festival, it was a massive online festival we ran at the end of February 2021, and it brought together game developers, researchers, educators, loads more creatives in a series of panel talks and workshops looking at the wider world of games, and specifically examples of ways that we can connect people through digital and virtual experiences, which is especially relevant, I think, to many people, I'm sure, over the last year. Throughout the festival, there were events that would attract lots of different audiences as well. So there's some people who might have just dropped in for one or two, and some that may have come to much more. But it definitely felt to us like there was a real feeling of recognising people and enjoying being at this event virtually and being a part of the conversation, even though you weren't there in the room. Having said that, it still doesn't replace being somewhere with people, but it got close.
There's certainly been some positives during the pandemic, in which case Luci explains here as to her work with radio and what it means to her.
It's such an honour to work with the team at Scala on the console. It's so fun and special to be part of bringing the UK's first weekly national game music radio show to the airways. And it's been an absolute delight to try my hand at radio broadcasting as well. I love this chance to share a huge range of game music on the show, and especially introduce new listeners to the genre, as well as celebrate iconic soundtracks with fans who are already so familiar with them. And I love hearing from listeners who tell us their own stories with game music as well. So there's so much that comes from it that I just really enjoy. It's such a special opportunity. I feel very grateful and honoured.
The pandemic has made entering the creative industries a lot more difficult for many young people. So I asked Luci for her thoughts, especially on music and gaming.
Certainly with music, probably game music, but also music generally, I think there are lots of practical things you can do, of course, like researching and getting comfy with the tech that might be involved in producing your own music or games music, which is you can still keep quite cheap and accessible. But things like having an audio editor or workstation that you're comfortable working in, getting used to a bit of recording with microphones for games, becoming familiar with audio engines and so on. Like I mentioned with the game design element, learning more about how games are brought together and what that involves and all the people that are usually involved in that process as well. So focus on your craft and what you love about it and what you can control. Always stay open to new music. Introduce yourself to all the nooks and crannies of music across the globe so that you're constantly amazed by what's out there and can keep pushing your craft. Look for places you can meet people with similar interests. Look to get to know them truly, and then you may be the person that they think of for that next project if you're wanting collaborations. And if you keep a playful, positive, and always exploring attitude, you'll be able to handle whatever bumps you meet along the way.